Welcome to another edition of Inside the Artist. Today is October 19th, 2021. I'm your host, John J. Rupert, and today we're taking you inside the creative mind of renowned author Emiliano Martin. Mr. Martin, how are you today?
Wonderful, John. How are you?
As you know, Mr. Martin, we've been receiving a lot of questions about your life as a writer. One of the many questions people ask is, what books has Mr. Martin written that we haven't seen yet? But the most important question is, why did Mr. Martin write those books? So today, here at Inside the Artist, we're taking you inside the mind of Emiliano Martin as he tells us why he wrote his famous books.
Well, John, I do appreciate this opportunity to talk about some of my books. I have some books out in the market because they were written with the best of my intentions. I have about 20 manuscripts that have not been published yet.
Wow.
And these manuscripts are written in my native language, which is Spanish. Some of them were written when I was a young guy, and I left them alone because I don't have to tell anybody that few people care much about a poet or poetry writing. Only big stars have made it into the publishing business. When I say by main big stars, I'm talking about poets. However, I am delighted to say that I am the author of a lot of titles. Some of them are poetry, some are prose. In the sense of poetry, I did put out some chapbooks a long time ago, and I have some of them with me. Moody Muse was one of them. It's a book of poetry about life itself, nothing extraordinary. It has about 40 pages, and it is a book I'm very proud of. In the Company of Time is another chapbook that I wrote probably 25 years ago. I have about 49 pages on this book. Again, it is a book that doesn't follow a theme, a subject. It is a book about life, friends, situations. It's a book about me. It's my thoughts about going through life.
Now, are they a particular style of poetry?
No, some of them are free verse.
Oh, okay.
But I do, even though I write in free verse, I do maintain a certain structure and rhythm. You can feel the beat. Mm-hmm. You can follow some of the poems in these chapbooks can be converted easily into songs. But that's another story. Dream and Shadows is another book I wrote about 30 years ago. It's a book about 54 pages. It's a book I'm very proud of.
How did you come up with the title, and what does the title mean?
Usually the title, Dream and Shadows, when I write a book, usually what I do is I pick up one of the poems and I use that title as a book. So that's how I pick up the title.
Oh, gotcha.
Otherwise, I would spend days of going through my head, what kind of a title am I going to produce? I just pick up one of the poems that I like and put the title of the poem as the title of the book.
Would you like to read Dreams and Shadows in the book?
Dreams and Shadows, I would need the glasses to do that. I'm going to just open a page. To dance with her. When the soul is quiet and the night is night, when the air is frigid and my breath just might explode in contempt, when the moon is full, and I see its light shining through a thick blanket of blue sky. I close my eyes and then breathe gently in the web of her demeanor. Intensely, I hear music in her silence, melodious notes of affection that make me stand at attention while I wait in line to dance with her. Slowly and softly, wrapped in her smile, thus I find the refuge to think, as much as I ignore why I am compelled to keep on dancing on the floor of our verse. Heavenly, magical moment, making contact eyes to eye, we unconsciously embrace, and I lose sight of my space when the soul is quiet and the night is night.
Wow.
That is one of the poems of Dream and Shadows. Another chapbook is In the Wilderness. This chapbook I happen to be the author of has very sad poems. I was in a not depressed mode, but I was not in the uplifting spirit.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't like this book. I don't like it.
So that would be considered one of your least favorites.
Yeah. This is one of my favorite chapbooks, Sparkles of Eternity. In this book I wrote one of my finest poems as a young person. Some are mushy, romantic, but I'm very proud of this.
Do you know which poem it was?
I don't remember right now, but there's so many here. I can go for hours reading poetry of this book.
Did you want to read
Sparkles of
something from that?
Eternity. Oh dear. I'm going to just open the page.
Because I know we do get a lot of comments about how people love you reading your poems.
Oh, thank you. When the muse strikes, a thicket of ideas rests in a still pool of silence, gently caressed by content under complete stagnation, oblivious to the surroundings events. The path of winds shift direction in a sudden crashing mood, coming down right on the surface, penetrating its way through, and then, in a poetic explosion, lyrics burst into the air, leaving behind a pool of indifference, unconsciously waiting for the rainfall of the season.
Oof.
Sparkles of Eternity.
I like the title.
Thank you. Blessed by the Moon is another chapbook I put out about 27 years ago. It's unbelievable how time flies. It's, I look at it and I say, wow, it's a book about 40 pages. And I'm very proud of this, Blessed by the Moon. Another chapbook I wrote a long time ago, Words in Captivity.
Oh.
As also one of my favorite books. As a chapbook, it did work. It's a very nice piece, I think. And another chapbook I wrote was Whirlwind of Thoughts.
That's a pretty nice title.
There's a poem with such a title inside the book. I don't remember how it goes because I have written so many that I don't remember by heart anymore, especially since I'm getting older. But the Whirlwind of Thoughts is a chapbook. And those were the chapbooks in the English language I wrote when I was a young guy. Later on, I wrote several books of poetry. By books, I mean larger books, some of them over 100 pages, which in my estimation is too many pages for a poetry book. A chapbook works much better than a book of a lot of pages. One of my first books was The Legacy of a Poet. This I wrote probably more than 30 years ago. And this is a book where I have fine poems, but as I get older, I read them and I'm tempted of making not additions but changing the style of the poem, because some of the poems are, in my estimation now, very childish. When I say childish, I mean they were the way they were at the time I wrote them. I was young, but now that I'm older, I said, I'm not that person. Of course I'm not. 35 years later.
So in your estimation, some poetry can become outdated?
As an author, you can do anything you want with your work. So some people don't have to do anything, just leave them the way they are, and that's fine. But as an author, you can do anything you want. You can revise, you can update, you can make it larger, you can make it shorter. The option is yours as an author. If somebody else have the copyrights, it's a different story, because now you are infringing the copyrights laws. But as long as you have copyrights of your work, you can do anything you want.
Yeah, because I know they say, as far as movies, some movies don't hold up to the test of time. Is that also the same as the written word? Like, years later, it may not mean the same as when it was first written?
It is and it isn't. It is because what you write can change in time. The human mind changes continuously. You can tell right now, the new generation doesn't think the way our grandparents thought. It's totally different. So the frame of mind is totally different. The same thing happened with the poem. However, the classics are classics because they work then and now.
And forever.
Forever. That's why they're classics. The rest is fashion. We follow the fashion, we don't follow the fashion, but we go with the times. Mm-hmm. The classics do not go with the times. The classics go forever. That's why they're classics. And most of us, including myself, of course, I'm not a classic. Words in Captivity.
Do you have a poem you'd like to read from there?
Well, I'll move along if you don't mind, because I got so many. Vulnerable Excellence is a book I wrote in prose, although I have a couple of poems inside the book. This is a story, in my mind, in my estimation, of the life and works of Salvador Dali, the great poet. He was a poet, but he's known as a painter, although he did a lot of things in his life. In the book, I describe the moments of his life since he is a young child till his death. Of course, I don't get into details because his biography has been written by many people. I think there are about 40 biographies about Dali all over the world. And I didn't go into details, but I did go into personal details that are interesting to mention because he had a fascinating life. This is in prose.
And I know you did get a lot of good feedback about that book.
Oh, absolutely. I had very good comments on this. As a matter of fact, the information I put in this book is not found in some of the biggest biographies written about the painter. Long time ago I wrote 511 Aphorisms of My Humor, which is a book written in English and Spanish. And recently I put out another book which is called Old and New Aphorisms of My Humor. It is basically this book, but corrected. I found not necessarily mistakes, but things that needed a touch-up or an extra touch of my own. Plus, I added about 60 more aphorisms in the book, so this became my latest work of art.
Just to refresh everyone's mind out there, what is an aphorism?
An aphorism is an old phrase that contains wisdom. When I say an old phrase, is something that has been maintained, said, written by somebody a long time ago, and it became a classic. Now I am, or I think I am, a philosopher, so I write my own aphorism.
Can you give us an example?
Absolutely. I'm going to open the page. Some men are not wise as they pretend to be, but they earned wisdom through experience. It's a phrase of my own that few people can deny. I can give you another one
Sure.
if you don't mind. The water runs wild and free, yet the bridge allows her to caress its feet.
Wow.
This is old and new aphorisms of my humor. Around the Fire is a book of poetry that I have published not too long ago, in which I have poems about love, disappointments, situations in life. Around the Fire. Another book I have written is called Unforgettable Moments. I got nice poems in here. I'm very proud of this book. Recently I have received a dozen comments from people who have read the book, and I was thrilled to know that, really? I didn't know that. So I'm very excited about this book. Another book I have written, Daydreaming in Verse.
Another nice
Daydreaming in
title.
Verse is a book that I wrote entirely in haiku.
Oh,
And of course, haiku is the form of a Japanese verse that contains 3 verses, one with 5 syllables, one with 7 syllables, and one with 5 syllables. And I wrote over 300 pieces of haiku.
can you give us an example of one of those?
Sure. Daydreaming in Verse. Nothing is too big when the need is upon us to show what we do.
Wow.
Daydreaming in Verse. It's another book I wrote. This is in Spanish. I call it Fuimos de la COE, that means we were of the COE, which means Special Operations Unit. And this is the book in which I describe my experience as a soldier. I was drafted into the army, like many other young men in those days. And in the book I relate many situations we went through with my buddies, with people I have to serve in the military, and it's a good memory for myself and my friends, and this is a nice book. Actually, it can be converted into a movie, because I have situations here that are not necessarily funny, but very, very productive for a movie making.
Oh, that one's written entirely in Spanish?
It is written in Spanish, yes. And it's been sold in Spain. Actually, in Spain, has been doing very well. They sell it in Amazon Español, and it's been doing very well. Of course, the fact that some of the people I serve with and their families have been buying the book, that
Been helping the sales.
That helped a lot. Another book I wrote in Spanish, and that is because I always wanted to do it. It is the Footprints of Poetry in Spain. In this book, I tell the history of poetry in the Iberian Peninsula from the Roman days to today. I mention every school of poetry, of course. I mention all the main poets that participated in the literature of Spain, and I'm very proud of this. I also put some samples of the poems these people wrote, not the entire poem because of the copyrights,
Correct.
but samples of and it's a beautiful book for anybody who wants to learn about poetry in Spanish and how it happened. This is the place to go.
So again, that's also written entirely in Spanish?
It is entirely written in Spanish. Another book, and this is a big book, is Coplas, Aphorismos and Diretes. This is a kind of book I wrote. It would take me many years of my life to write this book. It has taken many years. I would say I started in my late 20s when I started to collect thoughts, small verses, and gradually over the years I came up with this. It was finished last year, and the book is a big book. I have, I believe there are 570 pages. 570 pages.
It's a lot of writing.
And in it, there are over 4,500 small poems, short poems in Spanish. And they all are about philosophy or thoughts, kind of aphorism type of, but in verse. And it is a book that is, I'm very proud of, because this book contains about, I would say, 40 years of my life. I started a long time ago and I finished it up last year. And I finished it up last year because I decided that's enough. Not because it's all I could write. It's because I decided that's enough. I mean, I've been holding on for these poems for 40 years. And I put them in the form of a book, and it's a very nice title. Other than that, as you can see, these are the titles I have put out in the market. Of course, these books are in the internet.
Yeah, where can we find them at?
If you check with Google Reads, if you check with Amazon, if you check with Barnes & Noble, Barnes & Noble has this book, even in Spanish. Lulu.com. There is a website that is an international website. It's called Libro. They are in England and Spain, and they do have books from all over the world, from authors from everywhere. And I am with them. If you check this website, it's called Libro, and you look for Emiliano Martin, author, I will appear with most of the titles I have mentioned in here. And there are other websites in Brazil, even India. You'll be surprised. Even in India, they carry these books. So I've been trying to put out as much as I can. Like I said earlier, I am still writing. I have finished a manuscript that I will probably put out in a book next year, and I started another one that will be finished when it's finished. There is also a book that is very important in my life. The book is called Spain's Footprints in Philadelphia. It is a book written in prose. There's no poetry, although there are a couple of poems here, very short poems, but the book is in prose. In this book I wrote about the participation of Spanish people from Spain in the city of Philadelphia since the colonial days. In 1778, two Spanish people came to the city of Philadelphia to talk to the people who wanted to liberate themselves from the English colonies. And it's a long process of conversations that took place. The narration continues until today, with the arrival of new immigrants to the city of Philadelphia, and so on and so forth. So it's a very good history book for those who want to know about the participation of Spanish people in the city of Philadelphia. Something that even the locals do not know today, even though, as I mentioned in the book, there are sections in the city where you can see the houses where they used to live, you can see the statues representing them, you can see a lot of history that took place in those days. And the book is, in my opinion, of course I'm the author, is an excellent source of information. And that is something I put out about 2 years ago. And it's been sort of successful. Unfortunately, at the time of publication, the so-called COVID-19 pandemic took place. So I know 3 presentations of the book I have scheduled were totally cancelled. 1 in New York and 2 in Philadelphia. Recently, over the internet, in Zoom meetings and that sort of thing, I've been able to promote the book, but not the way it was intended.
It's not the same as real life.
It's not the same as real life. But hopefully the pandemic will be over soon and we will go back to being
normal.
normal, if there isn't
if there is such a thing, correct.
So this is the collection of books I have presented, and I want to thank you very much for the opportunity of allowing me to share with you all.
Mr. Martin, once again, we here at Inside the Artist want to thank you for your time. We know our viewers and our listeners, because some people listen to it instead of watching it, which is great. You can do it either way. You can check us out on the YouTube channel. Also, Google Emiliano Martin for all of his books. And we look forward, Mr. Martin, to our next interview with you on Inside the Artist. Have a wonderful day. Be creative, be safe, and keep writing, sir.
Thank you, John.